Okay. Hi, everybody. You get to hear more of my voice. Aren't you lucky? So, we are going to do. So, I said 3 videos. Technically, it's going to be 4, but I'm going to break the third video into part 1 and part 2. So, this part 1 is going to focus on actual, just doing it in time, running ProPresenter. So, this first video is going to be doing that with music, like with worship songs. And then the second video is going to be like that with preaching. So, this obviously, you guys know, takes a lot more changing and a lot more timing to run it during worship, because lyrics have to come up in a lot tighter of a time window. So we're going to focus on that today. I've got Spotify pulled up, so we'll listen to a couple different songs and then we'll do the message. So for the sake of argument, I've moved Our Father um, away from where it was last Sunday when we did it, and I've put it right after What a Beautiful Name. So that way, not only are we getting each song in general, but we're also going to hear kind of that transition between songs, and we can see that as we hear it. Um, so that's kind of the plan for doing this with worship. So before I start with that, I just want to give a couple quick notes about just running ProPresenter for the sake of timing and feel. Like I said in the first video, this is a really hard concept to really explain effectively. At least it's hard for me to explain effectively without just kind of having some sort of visual reference or being able to do it in real time. So that's kind of why these videos are being made in the first place, especially this one and the following with one of Kent's messages. So when we do this timing and feel, there's kind of an ABC that I want you guys to remember. And the A is for anticipate. So you're always thinking ahead as to what's coming next, even if it's something as innocuous as a blank slide with no text on it. That still has a really good sense of timing and also a bad sense of timing if it's placed in the wrong spot. So when we come off of a chorus, like what a beautiful name it is, the name of Jesus, go to the blank. It kind of goes blank a little bit, kind of in a sense of in time with the music. It goes blank when our focus has kind of moved from the lyrics we've just been singing to kind of the instrumental that's happening on stage. So if our blank slide kind of matches what is happening musically, and certainly as far as focus goes, meaning the focus of are we singing, are we listening, are we contemplating, those kind of things. Like if I start to pray or someone else on stage starts to pray, it's good to have lyrics off the screen so there's no doubt visually what our focus should be. Okay? So that's kind of a word with anticipation, is knowing what's coming next, and kind of knowing what the upcoming mood or the next slide, what it's supposed to feel like. Okay? I hope that makes sense. So that's the A of ABC. The B is to be engaged. Okay? So being engaged means, especially in the message when, maybe slides aren't happening nearly as quickly as they do in other parts of the service, still be engaged in what's happening. I don't think any of you guys are really ever leaving your station, leaving the computer, to grab a cup of coffee or something like that, which is good. I prefer that we can make sure we're at the computer the whole service. But even just sitting here, of course, doesn't necessarily mean you're paying attention. You could be spacing out, thinking about how hungry you are and ready for lunch, or you've heard the message before because it's second service, or you've heard these songs before, just on past Sundays or earlier that morning. So that's kind of where the hard work of staying engaged really comes in. And it kind of leans into the anticipate point as well. But being engaged really helps us to know what Kent is talking about or what's being sung, and as well as kind of reading that mood of the room. So I guess that's what I'll say about that. So yeah, just make sure you're engaged and again, what's coming and you're anticipating that. And then the C of the ABCs are cover. So cover is something that you hear a lot in kind of a production world or kind of a TV studio kind of world. any sort of live broadcast. And usually it deals with camera, with running different cameras. So like in college, for example, when we learned about kind of running like almost like a news studio where you have 3 different cameras people can be looking at. A couple of your cameras are doing, close up or middle kind of shots or stuff like that. And you pretty much always have at least one camera dedicated to what they call a cover shot. Sometimes it's kind of just a wide shot of the whole set, or whatever. But this cover shot is really great, especially in a live setting, because if something goes wrong, you always have something you can put on screen that looks intentional. Okay, and kind of the catchphrase was, when trouble hovers, go to cover. So in this media world, what we really want to kind of establish in that idea of cover is something like a blank slide. Obviously, that's got the copyright on it, but that's why we build these blank slides in, especially for instrumentals when the focus isn't really on any sort of text or lyric. We have that cover slide to go to for any moment when something may come up that isn't scripted or isn't, again, a visual focus like a lyric would be, whether I start praying or maybe somebody has come up with a word to Pastor Ken or Austin or John or somebody, and they come up with a mic and they really want to deliver that word right there, kind of in the middle of a song. We didn't plan that. We're certainly really happy about that. That's awesome that God is speaking, and we want to be responsive to that. And so when things like that happen, just going to a blank slide like this really helps us just keep everything on stage looking good and looking focused and well done, while pulling our focus to the right things. So if Kent comes up to speak in the middle of a song, which can and has happened in the past, that's great. And we have a way to accommodate that and make sure that we're letting our technology help us lean into what God is doing in that service. So even though it's a really technical thing, it really does play a major part in corporate worship to have technology like that, and to have kind of the know-how and the understanding of the whys and the hows of what we do, to help that corporate worship experience. So that's the ABCs: the A, the B, the C: anticipate, be engaged, and cover. So cover we'll talk a little bit more about in the message, because it has a little bit more of a real-time function there. But we obviously still have the covers for the instrumentals and such in the songs. So let's jump right into it. I'm going to pull up Spotify, and I'll go ahead and prep this first slide for What a Beautiful Name. So this is kind of our first cover slide, with the new background and with the copyright information. So I'll go ahead and play this, and you guys will hear it, but you'll hear me talk over it in the background, and we'll talk about some transition stuff. So in general, the rules for transitions on worship are that when we're coming out of one when we're coming out of one slide into the next, especially with the fade transition that we see that happens between slides, we want the fade to have been completed so the words are clearly in view, right as, or preferably slightly just before we need to sing it. And I'll demonstrate that when we go into the song, but know that that's the general rule that we're looking for. And this is for when slides are, kind of back to back like these are. If we're coming from, the end of this chorus into the next verse, there might be a little instrumental here, so we can kind of clear the text away and then jump into the verse when we know we need to start singing it. So we'll talk about that again as we go through it. There was one more thing I wanted to say. Oh yeah, when trouble hovers, or when maybe there's an arrangement change from rehearsal to service, these blank slides are your friend, because even if you don't know exactly what's coming and we aren't necessarily singing anything yet, don't hang on to a section we just came out of, because we're done with it. And if we leave something that we're done with on screen, it's a little visually disjoining. So if we've already sung the end of this chorus, what a wonderful name it is, the name of Jesus, and we kind of move into something like musically it changes, if somebody starts talking or something like that especially, go ahead and get rid of it. Go to a blank slide so that visually the focus is matching where it is you know, with lights and with the audio and with somebody speaking or singing or something like that. So, okay, those are just kind of some general rules that I wanted to lay out. So let's go ahead and jump right into it and do it in real time, and I'll kind of explain as we go as needed. So we're going to do What a Beautiful Name from the beginning. And just as a note, I am somewhat familiar with these specific recordings and arrangements, but I don't know them like measure for measure. So I'm going to be kind of playing a little bit of Follow the Leader on some of these spots, just like you might be on a Sunday, which makes the Sunday rehearsal where we're kind of taking notes on how things are going really important. So we know a little bit better of what to expect. Okay, so let's give it a go. Oh, wrong song. Let's do this. There we go. It was just a little late on my end. So these are a little bit quicker, as far as quicker between phrases. So we want to make sure the next lyrics are clearly in view in enough time. So if you need to change before the last word or couple of words are completed, that's fine. So I could tell by that really big downbeat that I knew this was coming. But hopefully during rehearsals you guys are able to make kind of those notes as you need to. And this is kind of a quick transition, just because the phrases are really close to each other lyrically. So again, it's okay to move early. People remember the last couple lines of a slide. They'd much rather see the new lyrics in enough time. Oh. Okay, so they don't repeat that. They're just going to a blank there. And that, you know, if that can kind of change with this new musical feel where you have this higher kind of piano, you know, quiet line. Oops, sorry, I got distracted. See, that's why you got to stay engaged. Yeah, so these move a little quicker. So if we need to change at the last couple words, that's okay. Make sure you have them in view in enough time. And these are kind of nice because they're all the same. So it really doesn't matter when you change them because they're exactly the same. Give you a little break. And I think that's the end of the recording. So we'll just go ahead and move on. And I'm going to change right here. just because that's kind of a good feel for the intro. In general, I'd love for the backgrounds and lights to kind of know when we're changing together so that visually all those colors change together. Oops, went too early on that. So it's not a ton of time, so I'll just leave it up. As long as somebody wasn't talking. But again, a rehearsal helps you make those notes and make those timing feels. I'm doing this pretty cold. So if your lyrics change too early, I'll show you. It's a little unsettling. See, that was a long time. So if you change too early, people are assuming that that means that what's on screen we need to be singing right now. So when they see it change, they're ready to sing the next ones. So that's why it's important to make sure you're anticipating changes but not going too early, or else it kind of ruins the mood of what's currently happening on screen. So like I said, there's kind of that fine window between too late and too early that you just kind of have to get used to. So yeah, as soon as they kind of transition and come into focus, people are ready to sing them. So if we can nail that right before we're supposed to sing them, that's ideal. Boom. On Earth. So that's a really weird change because these two phrases, come to earth and as it is, just kind of seem to be run together. And then we know they're going here. So that really works in our favor to let this slide hang on a little bit longer and then come to this repeated let heaven come. And we'll know from Sunday rehearsal and the roadmap, hopefully, that this happens a ton. So we know we can just live there for now. Especially moments like this, I try to be really conscious and have our vocalists be really conscious of calling out when we move on. Because we could stay in this repeated section for a couple bars or a couple minutes. And you guys have no way of knowing necessarily unless we're just really nailing it exactly the same every time. So that's when we'll start calling out yours is the kingdom or something like that. So make sure to listen for that in moments like this. So you just called let heaven so we know we're still there. Because yours, so that's our cue. She called it twice, actually. So we change just a little bit before power as a word is done. So they're not going back to repeat, so we just go to cover. Just a lot of vocal ad-lib. So we'll just stay blank for all that. So she called yours again, which is good. Anticipate. So that kind of cleared out of the way a little bit on that downbeat musically, which is great. If we can catch stuff like that, that's just little details that take us from good to great. But I think they're about done with this arrangement, but we'll see. If they are, we'll make sure to throw this last cover slide up. Just kidding. We still have more. So, again, I try to make sure we're really good about calling that out. You know, we're not perfect at it. I'll totally admit that. But in general, we try to help you guys out as much as we can. So we can kind of treat that Forever Amen kind of as like a little bit of vocal filler. Just ad-libs. Yeah, like this stuff at the end, like she's just kind of singing what she's feeling, and I think maybe what she's kind of praying with God at that point. And so when that's the case, it's totally fine to leave the screen blank, because it encourages people who are depending on the screen to really do that themselves. I'm going to pause this. So when we don't put anything up, even if it's lyrics they've sung before or they've read on the screen before, in those kind of more intimate, ad-libby kind of moments, it helps encourage people to do that, just like those people on stage. You know, I try to make sure that all of our singers and everyone in our band too, but especially singers, know like we're all worship leaders, not just the person who's paid on staff or the person who's leading a specific song. We're all worship leaders. And so if we're leading and prompting that just kind of sense of singing what's in our hearts, whether it's a lyric printed on a page or projected on a screen or not, and if we're doing that on stage and we don't necessarily expect people to sing the exact words we are, like lyrics are, then not putting lyrics on the screen helps people. It kind of forces them in a way, in a good way, I think, to really kind of engage with that and kind of just sing what's in their heart and sing, you know, pray through singing, you know, however that may take form for people. So again, these are technical things we're talking about when to change slides and when to clear into a, you know, kind of a cover slide like this. But it has a lot of meaning and it has a lot of weight. And that, you know, I don't hope for that to be a stressful comment, but rather to help you understand the significance that just because a media operator isn't on stage doesn't mean they're any less a part of the worship ministry or of the worship team. You guys do so much that I don't think you or even me or any of us really truly realize. We do so much to play a part in the worship service and in corporate worship, and not just running technical systems. You know, we're not just pushing buttons or faders. We're worshiping and we're leading worship even at the back of the room from a computer. So just want to make sure you guys understand that weight and that significance and that privilege to be able to do that. So just as a little bit of review, just to kind of change gears here and wrap this up, just want to make sure you remember your ABCs: to anticipate, to be engaged, and to cover when you need to cover. So if you remember those three things, you can get by at least, if not really do this well. And I think paying attention, you know, making some notes on your roadmap charts or wherever it makes sense for you to do that on your own, man, that's a great way to do it. And that's going to you're going to set yourself up for a lot of success while running media. So I'm going to go ahead and call this video good, and we'll get into running ProPresenter on more of a spoken word front, like with the message. So just a couple quick reminders. The ABCs, remember to clear off of your current slide in enough time so that your next slide comes into focus right before you want to start singing it. And remember, if you have to get off of a slide a syllable, a word, or even a couple words early to be able to get to the next one in time, that is totally fine, and that is preferred, I'll even say. I'd much rather have the next slide come up in time than be late with it, in the name of making sure we're sticking on one slide so that every single word and syllable is uttered before we change. I'd much rather have the new one come in time, and just make people remember the last word or couple of words on the previous slide. So remember, that is the name of the game, and that is totally fine. Remember, if we go too early, then people expect that we're going to sing that really, really quickly. And so if we go too early, they're kind of taken out of the moment a little bit and kind of taken out of what we're doing and just waiting to follow along on the lyrics. So these lyrics changing on screen, even though we're all looking at the screens for the most part, it should still kind of feel invisible. The timing of when these slides change should feel really natural and organic and really natural to the phrasing of the song, which is why it's really important, to have that Sunday rehearsal and go through. But remember, when you guys are scheduled on Planning Center, you see it just like the rest of our musicians see it. So you can go in and you can listen to the songs if they're ones you're not as familiar with, or even if you are, you can listen to them and even just kind of process through. Oh yeah, when we look at the bridge for Our Father, for What a Beautiful Name, these singles right here, these single lines, these can really move quickly. So if you're kind of really familiar with the song and how it phrases, you can anticipate that as you're in it. You know that Death Cannot Hold You and The Veil Tore Before You, they come together really quickly. And so even though they're separate slides, you can anticipate and move here quicker to be able to be right on time for us to sing that next phrase. So just a couple of reminders for you guys there. Hopefully that really helps and helps clear up, our vision and direction for how we really want ProPresenter and media and lyric slides to look in a concrete way, rather than me just kind of yakking on a Sunday morning without being able to just kind of show you what I mean. So hopefully this has helped with that. Again, any questions or any clarification we can bring or I can bring to this, certainly let me know, because I want to make sure you guys are set up for success. Not just, hey, you better do this the way I told you to do it, but it's because I really want you guys to feel like you're doing this well and to feel successful in this and feel like you're adding and actively a part of the worship experience here. So that's about all I'll say for that. I'll cut this short, and right here, short, that's probably a wrong term to use. I'll cut this here and we'll get into running media for spoken word and for the message for Kent and all that. So I'll bring up some audio from one of his previous messages, I think from this past Sunday, and we'll go through that. So, all right, guys, it's been a pleasure. Looking forward to this one last video with you.